So we are ready to start the live stream now. I will now call to order the study session meeting of August 3rd, 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically, and members of the council are participating remotely pursuant to the council's electronic participation policy. Public access to the meeting is available on the Local Government Access Channel 8 for Comcast subscribers, on the city's YouTube channel online, and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Here.
Councilmember Witkovich will be absent tonight. Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Downing.
Here.
Councilmember Brown will be absent. Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Duran Malika. Councilmember Escobar.
Here.
Thanks. Okay, so we have 5 items on the agenda for our study session tonight, and we are starting with the Xcel Energy presentation. So welcome, Preston Gibson. Hi, Preston, how are you?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm great. How are you tonight?
Great. Thanks for being here. Okay, so I will drive your presentation. You just let me know what you need.
That's great. Thank you for the opportunity tonight. I want to thank your city manager for calling me and making this time slot available on your calendar. And I want to begin by thanking Becky Smith. Becky has been great working with us on the Partners in Energy program. I know that she's on tonight. And Channing Evans wanted me to say hello to her. So Channing says hello, Becky. Thank you for all you're doing. And I want to just a quick note about Partners in Energy. It's a program that we started 3 or 4 years ago. Your city's been working with us for, I think, a couple of years at this point. And we now have an energy action plan for the city of Northglenn, and we're in the process of implementing it. I understand that we kicked off a ward challenge on July 1 with different wards competing in participation of energy efficiency programs. We're also working on small business outreach, including targeted outreach by the city's economic development department. We greatly appreciate their help because they are always constantly outreaching to businesses. And a number of other things. I won't go over the details, but bottom line, we really do appreciate the city's participation in Partners in Energy. We think it's going to pay dividends in terms of energy savings and sustainability. So it's going well. So again, wanted to thank the city for that. Moving on to the presentation this evening, building a clean energy future. You know, Xcel Energy has been a national leader in wind energy since 2005. So some 15, 16 years, we have led the industry and led the nation in terms of wind energy that we're putting onto our system. And of course, since the early 1990s, we've had energy efficiency programs. And just go ahead, and if you change the next slide, would be great. Mayor, if you could go to the next slide, would be great. And that just shows our service territory. You know, Colorado is one of 8 states that we serve. About 3/4 of the natural gas customers are here in Colorado, and about 1.5 million electricity customers. So anyways, I was going on some of the national leadership that we've displayed as wind energy, energy efficiency, carbon emission reductions. I'll talk more a little about that later, as well as innovative technologies. Let's go to the next slide, please. In terms of the priorities, lead the clean energy transition, enhance the customer experience, keep bills low. It used to be that our main priorities were reliability, and they still are. That's not on there as one of our top priorities, but although it is reliability and keeping bills low. Now we're very focused on leading the clean energy transition. In fact, when our CEO came out about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I guess about 1.5 years ago, and announced that we're going to be 100% carbon free by 2050, that was really a huge announcement in the entire country. And it just shows our commitment to lead that clean energy transition. We're creating a lot of customer experience options, and I can go over that in a little more detail in the presentation. And keeping bills low. We still are below the national average with our electricity bills as well as our natural gas bills. You might not think that when you're using a lot of air conditioning, you open up that electric bill, but But we are actually low. I was talking to a friend of mine in California recently, and he moved from Colorado, and he says, I wish that I had Colorado, XL bills here because it's very expensive where I'm living in California. So next slide, please. So in terms of leading the clean energy transition, the 2019 results, it's pretty incredible. Since 2005, we've lowered carbon emissions by 44%. A lot of times you wonder, well, what's the utility? Or what are we generally doing as a society to improve on our carbon emission reductions? Well, 44 is pretty significant. In fact, just in the last year, from 2018 to 2019, we actually lowered our carbon emissions by 10%. It was our biggest year in terms of carbon emission reductions, which is pretty remarkable. Our 2030 goal is 80%. It was 60%, but we've moved that needle up to 80%. That was one of the announcements that our CEO made back in December of 2018. Received national attention when he made that. But then going to 100% by 2050. We're a leader. We're leading that as a utility. But I can tell you others are falling in line. Since we've made that announcement, many other utilities have said this is where we're going as well, taking our lead on that. And I think it's great. It's great that we're able to sort of display that leadership and get other utilities around the country to also do that. So next slide, please. So when we're looking at what we're doing in terms of carbon emissions reduction, it is grounded in science. We've had a study completed by scientists at DU that shows the trajectory of where we're actually headed. If you look at that line that goes from sort of high left down to the low, it turns into a dashed line. That's where we're headed as a company. You can see as you go down to the lower limits, that shows the carbon emissions reductions. And anywhere in that gray band will get us to align with the Paris Agreement, the temperature target agreement. So we could actually lower them to a much lesser extent and still be in compliance with this Paris Agreement, even though our country hasn't signed on to that. Our utility clearly is meeting those requirements and those goals, at least set by the Paris Agreement, or Paris Accords, as sometimes talked about. So next slide, please. So the progress today shows you what we've done. As I mentioned, 44% carbon reduction in 2019, and I've got some numbers here. I'm looking at some notes. I don't mean to be looking at notes, but I've got a lot of things that I'd like to pass on to you. So I'll be looking down on occasion here. The carbon reductions that we've achieved since 2005, let's see. The U.S. commitment under the Paris Climate Agreement called for 26 to 28% reduction by 2025. We're already at 44% reduction, so we've already exceeded that. The EPA's original Clean Power Plan called for a 32% reduction by 2030. We're already at 44% reduction, so we're clearly meeting and well exceeding the reductions that have been set out by the Paris Climate commitment, as well as the EPA Clean Power Plan. So let's go to the next slide, please. So achieving our clean energy vision. I don't think I need to go over that. I think we've discussed some of that already, but clearly constructive public policy I haven't talked about yet, but helping us get there, whether it's standards or streamlining or whatever the case may be, is really important to us to be able to get to that 2050 goal of carbon-free 24/7 technologies. So next slide. So the path to 80% reduction by 2030. Most of this was really announced about 2 years ago when we did our Colorado Energy Plan. I think we talked about this last year when I was visiting with you. I think it was last June. And so what we're doing to achieve that reduction is we're adding 1,100 megawatts of wind, 600 megawatts of solar. We're adding an enormous amount of wind and solar to our system, as well as we're closing down early 2 coal-fired power plants in Pueblo. But in addition, we're transitioning our coal fleet. As I mentioned, we've already transitioned coal out of the Denver metro region. You might remember just south of Northglenn, the North Denver area, We had our Cherokee power plant that was all coal-fired. That's all natural gas-fired now. So that coal has been eliminated. In fact, coal has been eliminated from our entire Denver metro region, and we have plans to eliminate it from our fleets entirely. And so that's where we're essentially headed. Energy efficiency is a big point for us. Strategic electrification, such as electric vehicles. I have a slide or two on that further in the presentation. And continuing to invest in the grid to make adding renewables more seamless, and adding new technology so you can have different kinds of pricing programs. You can you can look at what you're using every day on a minute-to-minute basis and pick programs that will be most efficient for you. So let's go to the next slide, please. So the Colorado Energy Plan, as I mentioned to you, is something that we've been complying with in Colorado. And the 1,100 megawatts of wind and I think I said 700 megawatts of solar. The wind is being built on the Eastern Plains. Currently, we're working on our power plant, a wind energy plant out in Eastern Colorado with 500 megawatts. We just completed 660 and put that online. I think it was early last year. We continue to focus on wind, and we continue to also focus on solar. Solar has become much more affordable recently in the last year or 2 years. And in fact, we're also adding battery storage. We're adding 275 megawatts of battery storage. So because you're always looking, what's the next thing? How can renewables be more efficient, and how can they provide more value to the system? And battery storage is one of those things we've been looking at for a long time, and now we're using battery storage. And that was a big announcement when we decided to add that much battery storage to our system. So next slide, please. Okay, path to 2050 aspiration depends on 24/7 carbon-free technology. And currently, we don't really, I would say, have.
All right, boy. Mama loves you.
We don't quite have the technology available to get us to 100% carbon-free. We think the technology is going to be developed. It's going to be developed over the next, 10, 20 years. But clearly, it will be developed. And we think that we don't know what it's going to be, but we're supporting. We're sort of an all of the above in terms of technology, whether it's advanced nuclear. We don't have any plans, by the way, for nuclear here in Colorado. We do have a nuclear facility in the upper Midwest, but we don't currently have any plans, but we don't know what's going to happen. There could be small modular units that make sense in Colorado. Natural gas with carbon capture and storage. We're experimenting with that. Seasonal storage. Carbon capture, let's see, deep rock geothermal. There are many ways that we can store energy. And again, ways that probably haven't even been invented yet. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, supporting innovative policies is critical. We need the 24/7 carbon-free breakthrough technologies for commercialization. We need to focus on that and support that. Incentives for carbon-free, technology neutral. The ecosystem streamline permitting. Standards. Again, standards are important for long-term carbon emission reductions. And so just the policy environment is going to be critically important. And a lot of that's going to play out federally. Some of them will play out at the state with our state legislature. We've been working with the state legislature for a long time on policies that support our goal to be carbon free. We have every session there are policies that are in legislation that's adopted and discussed down at the state legislature, and some policies clearly are going to be local, especially as you're moving into the Partners in Energy program that I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. This just shows where we're looking at creating hydrogen. Hydrogen is one of those renewable fuels. We're creating it from nuclear, and then we can use it for commercial use. It can be used at times when we have peak demand to help lower the demand on some of the other generation sources for our system. This demonstration project with the Department of Energy is that at our Idaho National Laboratory, and again, it's at our nuclear plants that are not here in Colorado, but on the upper Midwest Next slide, please. The other thing is reducing emissions from our natural gas system. And the interesting thing, I've been working for Excel for going on 10 years from now, 10 years ago when I started. And when I started, we were looking at natural gas as being a great bridge fuel to go from coal to renewables. And when we refueled our Cherokee plant from coal to natural gas, that was something that was really applauded by the environmental industry to a large degree. And many of our customers thought that this was really the way to go because it creates much less pollution, about 80 to 90% less pollution than coal-generated electricity. Well, now, natural gas that's still a fossil fuel, right? It's still a fossil fuel. So how do we get away from fossil fuels? How can we create fewer emissions from our natural gas system? Some of it's going to be working collaboratively with sustainability initiatives. It's everything from our producers and suppliers to our system itself to creating renewable natural gas. We currently have a pilot project I think it's in the Littleton area off of Santa Fe, where we're using methane from an old landfill to create that renewable natural gas, creating a tighter system, being sure there aren't any leaks in that system, and eventually transitioning away over a period of time from natural gas. We've got a lot of investment in our infrastructure. Our customers have investment in all of their natural gas equipment, so it's going to take time. But eventually we're going to move away from natural gas over a period of time. And I don't know how long that's going to be, but that's something where we're starting to feel that pressure from our customers and from some in the regulatory fields that this is sort of the next focus for us. So next slide, please.
Preston, I hate to interrupt, but I see that Councilmember Goff has a question.
Absolutely, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it wasn't clear to me when we were going to ask questions. So,
Yeah.
and I think some of it has just possibly been addressed. But my question really had to do with the comment you had made about exploring technologies for the future, different sources of energy, and you had talked about different ways of getting natural gas or recycling it, or I can't remember the word you used. But anyway, my question is, since we know there's a proven track record for solar and wind, and I understand there's infrastructure for natural gas, but you just now talked about the pressure to move away from that. I was just going to ask how soon, what kind of a timeline you might have for that, and also just to say that I do think that it is really important that we do move away from fossil fuels as quickly as possible, because natural gas is cleaner than coal in a lot of ways, but there are other problems with natural gas that you can't compare across the board like apples to apples because of water issues and groundwater and just other kinds of problems that could come with extracting natural gas.
Well, it's amazing how quickly this field is moving. 10 years ago, we were moving just into renewables in a much larger way than we had in the past. And transitioning to natural gas was the right thing to do. And now we're looking at transitioning at some point away from natural gas. We don't know when that's going to be. What I can tell you is that we know it's going to happen. I'm sure at the point that it makes sense for our customers financially, because it's an expensive process. We have literally hundreds of millions, probably billions of dollars invested in our natural gas system here in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And not only just Xcel Energy, but our customers. You think about all the commercial businesses that have heating systems, boilers that are fueled with natural gas, and our customers with furnaces, you have stoves, and so on and so forth. And natural gas still is a less expensive way to heat by far than with electricity. And so moving away from it is not going to be easy.
Hey, Wayne, could you turn the light on up here? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Preston.
It is gonna take time to do it. And the other thing that I don't think we've thought of is if we move away from natural gas, and when we do that, what does that mean for our electric system? It means all of a sudden we maybe have to generate twice as much electricity as we've currently been generating, and we have to have bigger infrastructure, larger power lines, more power generation. Surely a lot of that can be done with wind and solar, but it's an expensive process. So we're looking at that. We're studying that as a company. We don't know when it's going to happen, but clearly we're taking that idea and running with it and looking to see how we can do it. So it's something we're doing.
Okay, well, thank you. I have concerns about that because of the hydrocarbons in the air and issues we have with natural gas, and the comment you made about exploring more battery storage, electrical storage is a good thing to hear about as well.
Yeah, thank you. And let me I'm almost done. I've just got a few more slides. I see I'm starting to run late. I'll say this, that battery storage is terrific. I mean, it's come a long way, but it's not a panacea. It's not what's going to eventually get us there. I don't think. We have 4-hour battery storage. That's great if you only need batteries for 4 hours, but if you can't store electricity that's generated by the wind or by the sun for much longer than 4 hours, it can be days. If you have if you have no wind and you have, let's say you're in the winter, you have no wind, you have a week of cloudy days, you've got to be able to have power that's available 24/7. And when I talk about 24/7 dispatchable technology, that's what I'm talking about. That's why we need that kind of innovation. So let's go next slide, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford, do you want to ask your question now or do you want to wait?
Yeah, I'd love to ask my question now because it does kind of piggyback on the question that Councilmember Goff asked, and it pertains to this slide. So, hi, Preston. I see here the exploration of renewable natural gas. And, just from my own research, I know that the development of RNG will literally expand the gas pipe system, which will lock ratepayers in relying upon relying upon and paying off a much larger system without the benefits of clean energy. And I would be interested in, y'all's estimations of how much RNG, is feasible to be created or captured in Colorado. But from what I've seen, there's not enough RNG to displace the need to electrify, and it's not necessarily a scalable solution. And so I'm, hearing you talk about the recognition that there's going to be an energy transition away from natural gas, because while it certainly is a cleaner burning fuel source, there are still carbon emissions associated with natural gas, and the extraction itself has the potential, as you know, to release methane, which is even more dangerous than the carbon emissions itself. And so I'm just curious, hearing you talk about the recognition that there is a transition that's coming. How is Excel preparing for the transition in the future in which everything, our homes and our buildings and our vehicles will be all electric? And what does that timeline look like to you?
We are currently researching it. We don't have a timeline at this point. When I'm talking about renewable natural gas, we have a pilot project. That's all we have at this point. I think that it's a good point that renewable natural gas cannot displace. There's likely not enough of it to displace natural gas in our entire system. I think we're looking at cleaner ways with renewable, of course, not taking gas that's non-renewable from under in the earth is something that's important. In some areas, some people want us to do that. I think eventually it's almost like a bridge fuel. It's almost like we were looking at just natural gas as we generated it, and we don't actually do any generation. We buy it on the wholesale market from those who are fracking it and getting it out of the earth. But we, that was a transition from coal to renewables. I think renewable natural gas likely is just another one of those transitions from coal to natural gas generated from the earth to renewables. I think eventually we will probably all be on renewables, but it's a long time from now. I think by 2030 we are sure that we can generate electricity and create 80% carbon reductions compared to 2005 levels. We're certain of that. And that's going to require us closing a lot of the coal generation. By 2050, we think we're going to be able to get to 100% electric generation in carbon reductions. But that doesn't include natural gas. Natural gas is another factor that we're looking at. And so because so many people use it for heating and for cooking, it's a very difficult question. I don't think we're saying, and Councilor, I don't think we're saying that we're going to just replace our natural gas with renewable natural gas. We're not really saying that. We're looking at it. We're looking at options. Some are asking us to do that, and our legislature, I think, this is one of the things they were looking at. So it's something that's important for us to do. It's not their overall solution, I don't think. It's a long-winded answer, but I think that's where we are as a company right now, to the best of my ability to tell you.
No, I appreciate that. And just a quick follow-up, if I may. You mentioned the goal of hitting 80% emission reduction goal by 2030 and then 100% of your reduction goal by 2050. But I know that there are a number of your coal fleet, a number of your coal plants that don't have retirement dates. In particular, Comanche, which is slated to run until 2070. So I'm wondering, can you all meet your emission reduction goals of 100% by 2050 while continuing to run Comanche, Hayden, Pawnee? What are the plans to transition to get completely off coal in Colorado? And I ask because I know Minnesota in particular, their primary provider is Xcel, and they're going to be completely off coal by 2030. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We've essentially eliminated coal-fired generation for the Denver metro region. We've done that over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and we do have other facilities. We have generation in Hayden. We have generation in Craig. We have Pawnee. We have Comanche. We have 3 generation units down at Comanche outside Pueblo. We're closing 2 of those early, and we work very closely with the county commissioners and the city council in Pueblo to create opportunities for those employees and create other power generation there. In fact, a lot of the solar we're putting there, the solar generation right there on the site where we had the coal generation. You're right. We bought not long ago, 15 years ago, we were approved by the Public Utilities Commission to build another power generating unit, coal-fired, at Comanche. At the time, that was the right thing to do. This environment is moving very quickly. I don't know that we're going to, I would doubt that it's still going to be in operation in 2050. We're retiring the other coal-fired units earlier than we planned to do it, which leads me to believe that we're likely going to retire this Comanche 3 earlier. And nobody's told me how early, so I can't directly answer the question, but it's likely that that's going to be retired early. I don't have a time frame on it, but it's likely that'll probably be the last power generation that's coal-fired in our state that's owned by Xcel Energy that's retired early because it was more recently built than the other units. So.
Great, thank you. I'll hold my other questions till the end. Thanks, Preston.
Okay, you're welcome to ask anytime. Let's move to the next slide, please. Beneficial electrification. New opportunities. The largest emitter of carbon emissions in the country right now is the transportation sector. I think it supplanted power generation several years ago, and now we've got some goals, big goals in Colorado from the governor. He wants us to put 940,000 EVs on the road by 2030. It's interesting because we probably have between 25 and 50,000 on the road currently. Not a lot. In fact, the entire country just passed 1 million last year on the road. So the governor wants us to create a million by 2030, when the entire country just passed 1 million. We weren't getting there with the current, the way we were proceeding. So we were enabled by the legislature to get more involved as a company in electrifying our electric vehicle transportation sector. We just filed in May our transportation electrification plan. That's a lot of syllables, but we just filed that. We're going to be able to invest more in infrastructure, in charging units, and working with cities and other jurisdictions. RTD, we currently have a pilot program. They're going to be putting, I think, 17 new buses on that are electric powered. Our transportation electrification plan, by the way, is for 2021 to 2023. It's a $102 million investment, and it'll hopefully allow us to get up to 100,000 vehicles on the road, EVs, by 2023. And that's helping us to get where we're going overall. One thing I think that's interesting, because I just was looking at this the other day, is the equivalent cost of electricity. If you can do the equivalent to a gallon of gas, it's about 60 cents as compared to about $2.50 for the same amount of miles driven. That is, if you participate on one of our rate programs where you can have lower rates in the evening. So you essentially power your vehicle, charge it up on non-peak hours, middle of the night, 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. And your cost is about 60% per gallon equivalent to gas. So it's much less expensive. The carbon emissions are dramatically lower, obviously. And eventually, when we're 100% carbon free, there won't be any emissions for driving an EV. So kind of amazing. Okay, next slide, please. And that just shows the numbers there. Conventional car, tons of carbon emissions per year. Where we would be today with an EV by 2030, when we created that 80% reduction in carbon emission, we're down to one and a half tons per year for an EV charge on the system. But again, by 2050, it will be zero. Next slide, please. This just shows our evolving mix. And as we talk about coal, look just at 2005. In 2005, we were at 56% coal-fired generation, 23% natural gas. Now this is, for our entire system in terms of 8 states. You can see you've got nuclear in there. That's not in Colorado, as I mentioned. But you can see, if you look at 2005 to 2030 estimate, you've gone from 56% coal to 60% renewables. You've completely flip-flopped where we're headed. Let's go to the next slide, please. In showing it just in Colorado, we don't have obviously in nuclear. We've gone from 65% generation in coal. We've cut that in half by 2019. We're going to 23% by 2027 estimated, 57% of renewables. Incredible changes in a short period of time. Next slide. Coal plant retirements. If you look at most of those, I don't need to read through that. You can probably take a look and see, but most of those coal plant retirements, those are in Colorado. You can see Cameo and Cherokee and Arapahoe. You can see a lot of those, Belmont in Colorado, all retired between 2005 2018. You can see some of the others like Craig and Comanche, Comanche 2. They're going to be retired by 2025. And then the others by, you can see by 2030. So coal plant retirements, that's something that we're doing to a very large extent. No need to beat that anymore, but it's what the industry is doing as well. The industry is headed this direction. Next slide, please. What we like to say is steel for fuel. We coined that phrase and everybody else is using it. When we say steel for fuel, typically fuel is coal or natural gas. Steel means it's steel pole for a wind turbine. Steel for fuel are wind products. And we've, again, we've been a leader, national leader for some 15 years or so. Largest multi-state wind investment, 70% increase in wind portfolio. We've got a huge amount of wind generation in Colorado, out on the Eastern Plains. Rush Creek, 660 megawatts. That was enough for 325,000 homes, by the way. So if you look at the equivalent, you don't really know what a megawatt is. When I started with the company, I didn't either. But look at 660 megawatts, 325,000 homes. Cheyenne Ridge is 500 megawatts. That's another probably 250 or so thousand homes. We're creating an enormous amount of wind energy in our system. Next slide. Range of renewable choices. If you want to get there faster than we're getting there as a customer, for a very small amount, you can sign up with WindSource. our solar rewards. We have solar rewards community. If you're leasing an apartment, you can't put solar panels on your roof. You can do that. If you're a business, you could participate in solar rewards community. Many different ways to move faster than our company's moving. Next slide. Energy efficiency leadership. I think the interesting thing is we've avoided building 21 power plants by the energy efficiency savings that we've created since 2005. It's very expensive to build a power plant, very difficult to do that. And that investment has to be paid back. It's paid back by our customers, by our ratepayers. And so that to the extent that we can help our customers with these energy efficiency programs and the various rebates and incentive programs that we have to help our customers achieve that, it helps all of our customers by not having to build additional power plants. And we've avoided 21 of them over the past, since 1995. Yeah, next slide. Environmental benefits. You can see what we've done. 44% reduction in carbon emissions, but you can see the coal ash, the sulfur dioxide, the nitrogen oxide emissions. Much cleaner air as compared to where we've been in the very recent past. Next slide. Keeping our customer bills low is very important to our company. And I can tell you that as we've transitioned to renewables, some have said, well, we want you to move faster than you currently are. There are always those that want us to do that. I mean, I want us to move faster than we are. But there's a point at which customers aren't willing to absorb additional costs on their bills. But because the cost of renewables has come down to such a great extent, it's now the least expensive way to generate electricity. But just on average, over the last 10 years, our electric rates have been 33% below the national average, and gas has been 19% below the national average. So with that, I think I will thank you. That's my presentation. And I appreciate your time this evening. As always, it's always really great to visit with you. I enjoy talking to you and always enjoy seeing you, by the way, at the CML annual conference. Unfortunately, I won't see you or Corey there. Hi, Corey. And so I'm going to miss you, although we are going to be, I'm actually on a panel giving a presentation with the Economic Development Council of Colorado on resiliency. So hopefully you'll have a chance to tune into that. So that's it. Thank you so much. If you have any other questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Hey, Councilmember Mullica, welcome. Mayor Pro Tem has a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not so much a question as much as it is a comment, but I know we're going to talk about our sustainability plan after Preston wraps up here. And I know that transportation-related emissions are the largest source of emissions in our city, and they're also the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the state of Colorado. And I just wanted to say to Preston, I'm really excited about the transportation electrification plan that you all submitted to the Public Utilities Commission. Investing in clean energy programs is already a really powerful economic driver in Colorado. And I just expect that your plan will continue to create the jobs, support local businesses, and drive technological innovation in the years ahead. So I just wanted to give you a public high five that it's a really great plan, and good luck with the Public Utilities Commission. But I think y'all are on the right track.
Thank you for that.
Does anybody else have a question or a comment for Preston? Well, as always, it's good to see you, and we appreciated the update. Lots of progress, and that's a celebration. So thank you. See you later.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, well, Mayor Pro Tem teed it up for us. So we have our Director of Planning and Development with us tonight, Brooke Savoda, and we are talking about our sustainability plan. We have Brooke and Becky. Hi.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Becky is going to be leading the majority of this conversation. I just want to sort of tee this up a little bit as far as what we want to try to accomplish tonight. First off, this is a very lengthy memo, and we do not intend to go line by line. So you can all take a big sigh of relief right there. I know baseball is happening. But what I do want to touch on is that we won't spend a whole lot of time on what we're doing now. We will spend a little bit more time on what we're proposing to do, and then also what the real purpose of this discussion was is we were planning to have this pre-COVID conversation to sort of develop a game plan. This is sort of walking back through the history here of what we really wanted to take on as far as existing capacity within the various departments of the organization that are currently carrying out most of the things that Becky will talk about tonight. And what does it look like moving forward? So we're not really trying tonight to hash through what we can and can't do as much as what we want to try to take away tonight is what would you like to see us do, and where are the areas of focus that you would like us to put our resources the most to? Then our goal would be, is based off the feedback tonight, is to come back to you through the budget process and discuss with you what that really looks like. And I think part of what we're talking about here is there's a certain bandwidth within the existing staffing and capacity for level of service to take on some things. And then there's some things that we probably can't do. And so what we'll probably do with the budget process is come back to you and say, do we add, subtract, or how do we look at those types of things? So I just kind of want to tee that up a little bit in terms of the overall aspect of what we want to try to accomplish tonight. And Becky's going to kind of start off now and walk you through the more specifics of what I'm talking about. So with that, I'll hand it over to Becky.
Hi, Becky.
Hi. Thanks, Brooke. So the memo, as you guys can tell, does include the background and history of where we were and where we are today. And the reason we felt that including this was really important is because there are several new council members, and also so that you guys know where we're pulling the guidance we're taking as staff and how we're looking at some of these initiatives. And what, as Brooke said, we're really trying to get to tonight is narrow down some of the things that we could focus our energy on and what you guys are most interested in. So with that said, in terms of the background, there were several documents provided, including the sustainability study or plan, the risk adaptation advisory report, and the energy action plan. And I don't want to skip any questions that any council members, especially those that weren't part of when we went through the adoption process, if you guys have any questions about any of those plans and what we're doing with them at this point. Throughout the document, I did include some of, especially with the new items that we're going to discuss, how they would tie back into the sustainability or energy action goals. Great. So with that, I'll move on. So the document also includes programs and initiatives that the city has taken on as a result of adopting our sustainability plan. And I do want to give a shout out to all the different departments that have helped to enact this plan. This is not, the planning department leading all these efforts. This is definitely all hands on deck and different departments taking a lead on a lot of these things. And some of the things that we've taken on is in 2019, we started zero waste events. And we actually ended up piloting composting, which if this had been a normal year, we would have done composting, recycling, and trash collection at all of our events. We also did a recycling awareness program. We found that contamination in our recycling is one of our biggest problems with residential recycling. And so we keep trying to push that message out there because recycling is really confusing. And different recycling facilities take different things. And so we want to make sure that our residents know what our MRF is taking and what they can put in recycling. The senior center has jumped on board and they're getting rid of styrofoam using all renewables. As Preston mentioned, we did enter into phase 2 of our Partners in Energy with Excel, which is implementation of our energy action plan. And so we'll get into a little bit more of what we're doing currently, but we are doing a lot with the Partners in Energy. We've had to adjust and be flexible due to COVID and what some of our strategies were, but we are still trying to move forward with that. Tammy and Sophie have been really busy with water conservation. They have new water conservation programs, including the turf replacement program, as well as they're wrapping up their integrated water resources plan that I believe you just adopted. I believe you were seeing it on July 27th. So, And then, Debbie and Shannon have also been really busy. I don't know if you looked at the sustainability plan, but it does include sort of a triple bottom line, which is social, economic, and environmental. This memo really focuses mostly on the environmental because that is in your strategic plan that council adopted. But I did want to give a shout out to Debbie and Shannon for all their work that they're doing for a sustainable economy. In addition to those that we've already kind of rolled out, we have started new initiatives this year that you will be seeing come online. We received a grant to install an EV charging station through Charge Ahead Colorado, and that's going in at our M&O facility. Some people might ask, why not City Hall? And we did think about that, but because the site is under construction and redevelopment, M&O made a lot of sense, and also it allows us to, in the future, consider possible conversion of fleet vehicles if we decide to go that route and charge them on site there. The Energy Action Plan, Preston also mentioned that we are rolling out our ward challenge. So this is where we maybe need your help a little bit. We're really trying to get households in each ward excited about signing up for energy programs to conserve energy in their households. One of the big programs that we're trying to push out there is the Home Energy Squad, which will do an audit of your house and give you recommendations on how to change out fixtures or conserve energy through proper installation and weatherizing. And so that's just one of the programs that Excel has that can help our residents conserve energy. We're also setting up for internal city operations a portfolio manager that will track the usage of all of our city facilities so that we can get a good understanding of how our operations are how when we do certain operations, it's affecting our energy usage, and if there's a way to optimize that, as well as how different strategies that we implement are affecting our energy usage moving forward if they're working. And then we're also, as part of that project, really reaching out. And again, this has been, Shannon has really taken the lead on this to our business community on different programs that Excel is offering them to do energy audits and help them get more energy efficient as well. Another big project that we're jumping off with this year is the waste optimization study, which will look at our residential waste collection services and ways that we could make that more efficient, provide potentially additional services to our residents, depending on what the study says, and possibly looking at different trash collection in terms of incentivizing residents to throw away less and maybe utilize other means of diverting waste from just the landfill. And we probably will have a consultant under contract this month for that project. There's information about the Northglenn Civic Center and how the Recreation Senior Center and Theater are being designed as a more energy efficient building, as well as the fact that we are planning to put 2 EV charging stations in there as part of the development. And then finally, Brooke, it's an item after this, so I'm sure you're going to get a lot of information, but we are looking at updating to the 2018 international codes, which just by moving from the 2009, which is what we're currently on, to the 2018 will make the city's new development and different improvements that are made to buildings more energy efficient. So do you guys have any questions about the stuff that we're currently working on at this point?
Yeah, Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. I guess I'm not sure if these are questions or you said you were interested in getting some input from us as well. So the couple of things I would like to say at this point is that we didn't spend as much money on some of the events that we had this year. We were planning to do that zero waste thing at the Pirate Festival, and that that's probably not going to happen the way that we had planned. So I thought if there was some extra money in the budget from this these activities that were earmarked for sustainability plan items, could we maybe use that money to put in another electrical vehicle charging station? I know there's a space for it, but the new rec center, and I think there's maybe some grants in the works, but if that's not the case, then even just doing that somewhere else, just to add another one somewhere else. And then, I don't know, are you wanting more some suggestions and things now too, or should we wait for the end for that?
I'm happy to do discussion throughout. We are going to jump into the discussion that's really trying to set council priorities. And I included in the memo a lot of things that staff has investigated, but that by all means does not mean that you guys can't bring other things to the table that you want us to look into. With the EV charging station, we are planning on putting 2 in at the rec center. So with your comment, are you thinking an additional one to the 2 that we're planning to put in?
Or somewhere in another different location. But I think the more of those we can get now, the sooner, I guess, the better.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want us to maybe wait to the end for the add priorities? I'll do that for the rest. But I was going to ask about that because you had mentioned that right now. So
yeah,
I'll wait on the other things.
Anybody else?
Nope.
All right. So basically, this brings us to the discussion of our priorities moving forward. And as Brooke said, what we're really trying to gauge is what council wants us to prioritize in terms of investigating what a budget impact would look like, as well as resources. So we're not, depending on the discussion, we're not going to necessarily go out and do everything in 2021 that we discussed here today, but we are going to come back with information about what that means, as well as what we have the capacity to handle within staff. So we'll investigate what the priorities are in more detail and figure that out. So with that, we did have $25,000 budgeted this year for sustainability, and we have used some of those funds prior to COVID. The unspent funding for sustainability still remains to be determined with everything that's changed this year. So really the discussion today is really just focused on priorities, and we're going to figure out that budget and resource thing moving forward. So it may not be 2020, it may not be 2021, but things that we can definitely look into. So the first item is the home energy squad, and this was coming out of the energy action plan from the partners in energy. And one of the suggestions was to incentivize residents to actually do the home energy squad visit, which includes a member coming into your house, doing a home audit, and actually replacing several items to make the home more energy efficient. So that $50 that a resident pays is actually worth $200 in LEDs and upgrades that are made to the home that day. A suggestion in the plan was that we provide a rebate to residents that do this home energy squad visit. And I have talked to some of our surrounding communities that have done that rebate type program, and they have been pretty successful in getting the word out and residents taking advantage of that. I know times are kind of weird, so some people might not be comfortable with people coming into their home, but it seems like more and more people are opening up a little bit. The Home Energy Squad is doing virtual visits, but doesn't include any of the replacement of stuff. And so we will be pushing out virtual visits where they can make recommendations to the homeowner on what they can upgrade. And so that we are rolling out just as part of our energy action plan and what people can do to improve their ward energy usage. And the other thing that we really looked into in pretty big detail for possibility for 2020 was a solar co-op program. In 2019, the cities of Westminster, Northglenn, and Broomfield applied for a state grant through the Department of Local Affairs to receive funding to basically start a North Metro solar energy co-op, which the co-op is you educate residents on the benefits of solar energy and solar panels on your household. People sign up to be part of the co-op. They're not obligated at that point. So once you have enough people signed up for the co-op, the Solar United Neighbors, which would be administrating this process, helps those people in the co-op put out an RFP. And so the advantage is that you get bulk purchasing. So that already reduces the cost for the solar provider. Then those residents have the option to participate in the actual selection of the provider. So if they want to, they can just trust their neighbors, but if they want to, they can actually review all of the submittals and work with their neighbors on selecting a provider based on what they're willing to give as a rate on those solar panels. Once that part is done, that solar provider that's selected goes out to each residential home and provides them an individual quote. And at that point, the resident decides if they want to move forward with the panels or not. So there's no obligation until they actually enter into a contract with the solar provider. So, and basically we liked the idea of doing a collaborative North Metro co-op. I know that Westminster is planning to start their co-op. And so one of the things that we're looking to do is build as a community, as some of the neighboring cities to Westminster are ready to join in. But it's just another option for this council to consider if and there is a charge to basically getting sun up and running in your community. So that's what that $10,000 is. Another program that we looked into is Sustainable Neighborhoods, and this was created in Lakewood, and it really gives residential neighborhoods an opportunity to come together and decide what their sustainable priorities are. And the city facilitates that process, and then the neighborhoods could get different awards for their sustainability actions. So some neighborhoods did composting initiatives in Lakewood, some did garbage collection, but it really puts the lead and ownership into the community's hands with what they want to prioritize in terms of sustainability. And the city does have a small budget to facilitate it and then also track all of those activities online so that the neighborhoods can see what each neighborhood is doing. Next, Northglenn implementation, as Mayor Pro Tem Wilford pointed out, our biggest greenhouse gas contributor is vehicle miles traveled, and Connect Northglenn is our bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And so we did adopt in 2018, but we haven't had a dedicated funding source to implement. So we've been implementing with our Public Works Department through capital improvement projects as they happen, as well as opportunities with grants. But we're not outside of those opportunities having any plans to do any sort of implementation at this point. Another item that we've looked into and discussed is green building standards. And so the IBC does include an international green building code, and City Council could consider doing that. A lot of communities are actually looking at their own community for what makes sense and building their own stretch code is what it's sometimes called, or beyond code, which would apply to new construction and redevelopment. That would be done in coordination with a stakeholder group or the sustainability committee, and then also City Council, because there are different implications to adding green building codes to construction. We adopted a greenhouse gas inventory, or finished our greenhouse gas inventory in 2019, but we didn't include a carbon goal in our sustainability plan because that came before the greenhouse gas inventory, and we haven't gone back and set a carbon goal around what that plan says our carbon emissions are. And so that is something that we could take on in potentially in 2021, is work with our sustainability committee and City Council and decide what goals this city would want to make. Some communities have gone to, a real ambitious goal of zero carbon emissions. Some do the ambitious goal with some step goals that are more achievable so that there's something to work towards. So that's a conversation that we could have. Electric vehicle charging and expanding our grid is another thing that we could look at doing as a city. So there's Charge Ahead grant. There's also different solar charging technology. So we have investigated the cost, and it depends on how far the solar charging or the EV charging station is being put from the power source. There's also solar EV charging stations. Lots of grant opportunities around this, but a lot of the grant opportunities do require a local match, typically a minimum of 20%. And so there would have to be some of that planning ahead of knowing what grant opportunities we wanted to go after and how much money we were wanting to put towards it. One of the advantages to expanding our EV charging network is just that it gives potential owners of EV vehicles a little bit more comfort in knowing that they have places to charge their vehicles, as well as one of the gaps in EV vehicle ownership or accessibility is for multifamily, because there's just not as much charging opportunities at a multifamily residential EV fleet vehicles. So along those lines, we did look at a cost benefit analysis when we were going through the sustainability planning project or process. And to just convert the fleet is not, it's pretty cost prohibitive and doesn't make a lot of sense. But we could look at a policy where when a sedan vehicle is ready for replacement, if it makes sense to have that replacement be an electric vehicle. And there still are, for some of those vehicles, different incentives that the city could take advantage of. We can't actually get any of the rebates, but you can work with the car dealership and they get the rebate for the EV, and then they offset the cost of the vehicle to the city. Another thing that we've discussed is looking at a single-use plastic ban or a plastic bag ban. This would definitely be resource intense, as it would take a lot of education and working with the community before even moving into an adoption of such a policy. But it is something that we could certainly look at if that feels like a priority for City Council. Jack's Solar Garden. So this one was brought to me by one of our sustainability committee members that thought this was just a really cool project. Basically, it's a solar garden in Wyandotte. Why not? That is also integrating the agriculture component. So one of the drawbacks to solar is that when you put in a solar garden, you basically make the land unable to cultivate. And so what they're doing is putting in special solar panels that allows them to cultivate and still grow produce on the land and keep that farm active. This is a subscription, so it would not take a lot of staff resources. However, it may not be necessarily a cost benefit to the city. It would be more of a, this is a priority to the city. And so sometimes we may come out ahead cost, energy cost wise, but sometimes we may not.
I see that Councilmember Mullica has her hand up. Question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. So my question is a little further back, I'm sorry, but one of the things that I think there's a lot of information here, and I could see where, you know, for me at least, I'm trying to figure out like what are the priorities here, or how do we kind of move forward with this, because there's lots of options. And so one of the things that I was actually curious about is when we go back to the house visits that you were talking about. I forgot what you squad something. Hold on one second. I'm screwing the home energy squad. I'd be interested to learn about what are some of their greatest findings, their most consistent findings of improvements for Northglenn houses, and then also, you know, what are some things that we could do as a city to help support folks who want to make those changes to their home, and just kind of thinking along those lines. I know that's probably a really small piece of the puzzle because there's like a lot going on in this document here, but I just feel like, you know, that would be something that could be beneficial for those residents who perhaps don't have that extra money to be throwing in for insulation or, you know, even some of those basic things.
Absolutely. And like I said, this is sort of a dump of the things that we've explored. And this has been one of the challenges that staff has had as far as we've got these goals in our sustainability plan and in our energy action plan, but it doesn't necessarily outline what steps to take to get us to these goals. And so what we want to hear tonight is, do you want us to do more of a residential focus, or do you want us to focus more on renewables? Some of that guidance would, which will really help us figure out what resources are needed, as well as any type of budget requirements that are needed moving forward.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Becky, Brooke, thank you for bringing all of this together. There really is a lot going on, and I think it's a really great snapshot of all of the work that you all have been leading. From my perspective, I think two things that could be really helpful for us as we continue to move forward with this conversation is setting some goals, specifically around what we want to see in terms of emission reductions, and what those dates are for those specific goals. Because I think, we've got a lot of really great things that we're thinking about, but I don't know that we necessarily have a roadmap per se for like what our end goal is and our destination is. And so I think that could be really helpful. And I know that, many cities across our state, many counties across our state right now are currently going through the exercise of establishing their goals and then figuring out what policy changes are needed in order to achieve those goals. And I know that Summit County just recently, I think earlier this year, adopted a climate action plan that's really excellent and could potentially be a model for us when we're thinking about what could be really meaningful and impactful in our community. So I think that's one potential thing we should talk about. The other one that I think would be really helpful, perhaps after we've established some of our carbon reduction goals, is to think specifically about how we're reducing overall transportation related emissions, right? Like I love the bicycle and the pedestrian plan. I think it's really meaningful. I'm super committed to seeing it implemented. But the reality is that bicycle and pedestrian work can only get us so far in terms of transportation emission reductions, right? Especially when we have I-25 going right down the middle of our city. So that tells me that we've got to think a little bit bigger about how we're actually getting to any potential transportation emission reduction goals, right? So thinking about how are we as a city going to eventually electrify our entire fleet? And, we can absolutely electrify over time our, light duty vehicles. So things like sedans, right? Like right now, it's probably not realistic to expect that we're going to be able to electrify our police vehicles or our, medium high duty vehicles, right? And like, we're in a really great position because the state of Colorado, as Becky, you probably know, just signed on to a multi-state MOU around building out truck standards for medium and heavy duty vehicles, which will ultimately mean that in the next 5 to 10 years, we're actually going to have vehicles that may meet our needs on the market, right? And so like, if we can start thinking about, and looking at specifically with transportation, maybe doing an EV readiness plan and taking a look at the vehicle miles traveled for every single vehicle in our fleet, identifying potential reductions, right? If we've got 5 sedans that are just hanging out in front of City Hall or hanging out at MOU or at M&O, is it really financially smart for us to keep holding onto those vehicles, right? Like, is there a reduction that can be made or not? And then when we think about reducing emissions primarily from our transit corridor, I think paying attention to Excel's transportation electrification plan at the Public Utilities Commission is going to be key. Being our city having a voice when it comes to proceedings at the Air Quality Control Commission, when it comes to adopting some of those truck standards, is going to be really important. And then us continuing or taking advantage of the programs that Excel is proposing around consumer education is going to be really important in order to get members of our community to adopt, but also members of the Colorado community to adopt, because again, it's more than just what's happening in Northglenn. So I'm going to pause there for a moment. I know I just shared a lot of information, but I obviously am passionate about this. This is the area of work that I am engaged in every day. So I have a lot of ideas, and I think, certainly while Northglenn is small, we can be really mighty. And I think that we can try a lot of things that perhaps other communities can't try just because they're so large. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that I'm totally in favor of exploring voluntary green codes. Denver just passed their voluntary green stretch code last December, and it's fantastic. They did a lot of stakeholder engagement with the building community, with the apartment association, with other stakeholders throughout the city. And what they came up with is something that I think is really forward thinking. So a part of their green stretch code includes, requiring that, again, it's voluntary, but requires that all new residential buildings be 100% all electric, which, I think about some of the redevelopment that's happening in our city. And if we're not thinking about building electrification, then what's happening is we're allowing buildings to be, and homes to be built right now, which in 10, 20, 30 years, those homeowners are going to be cost burdened with the cost of retrofitting their homes and getting off of gas. And so I think that there's a lot happening right now that I would really love to see us try and think long-term and big picture about what some of our carbon reduction goals could look like, because now is the time to plan.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Goff also has a question.
I think we're kind of approaching the end of this, so I don't know about questions, but I know in the sustainability plan, there's 8 goal areas. So, it explains why this is such a huge undertaking, and there's all these different things, different pieces moving, and I can understand why it's difficult to prioritize. But one of the things when I'm looking at the goals here and the resource conservation, and that you do have some different things there about water conservation, and those look really great. But I think one thing that comes to my mind is how we give awards to the Yard of the Month all summer long, and the yards are beautiful, but they're also very green and probably use a lot of water. And I was just wondering if there was some way, I don't know if we could pick one of those months or change the whole program over, or I don't know, a certain number of those homes we could give a Xeriscape, yard award as a way to not only acknowledge and thank the people who are making that switch over, because I know we have that program where, we give people money if they switch from grass to something else. But also as that would, I think, it'd be a good education piece for other residents as well to see and hear about, what that would look like, and who's doing it. You could drive around in your neighborhood or walk in your neighborhood and see those homes with the sign on it, and get some good ideas for that. So that's something that I would push. I would echo with Mayor Pro Tem that the more electric vehicles we can do, the better. The little golf carts that go around with Parks and Rec all the time, those easily could be electric. And the recycling for me, and the composting and the residential, this is, I guess, mostly residential. My ideas for priorities would be to have a lot more, I don't know. I guess education of our residents, or maybe even for us as a city council or somebody on staff to do some research on what exactly, how much of the recycling that we're paying a company to pick up and take away gets recycled, and how much of it is contaminated or for whatever reason ends up in a landfill. And if there's some way that we could be more effective with that, maybe we're going to switch to just cans, glass, and cardboard or something. I don't know. But, when recycling first got started, it was, pretty simple. It wasn't everything. And if all these plastics are having problems with the recycling, then maybe we shouldn't even be picking those up. So that's something that I'm really interested in putting on a list as a priority, is to try to figure out how we can be more effective with our recycling program.
Those are great suggestions. And honestly, I think this is probably a good time to start just having the discussion, because the last two items you guys have access to. But just really to get a sense from the overall council sort of like straw poll of where the priorities are. And I definitely heard a couple of you say strongly that expanding the EV network or looking at conversion to EV vehicles is important. I heard the carbon neutral goals setting is important, or even looking at a climate action plan, as well as how to help our homeowners conserve and become more energy efficient. And I really like the suggestion for the yard award to look at the xeriscape yards and maybe honor those residents that are saving water as well.
I actually think we have done that in the past. I have a feeling the reason I don't know specifically for this year, and maybe Diana, if she knows, but it may be that we don't have many out there that we found. But anyways, I just wanted to mention we do that. We have done that program for in previous years. And if I may, real quick, I just want to also mention is that Councilmember Wolford had mentioned about setting standards, and I believe our sustainability plan has those goals identified, or in a sense of trying to reduce by certain percentages, certain things. I guess the question is that if we want to go to a higher level of setting standards and benchmark against that, we're happy to do that. But Am I speaking there, Becky, on that?
So our sustainability plan does include goals that are specific to energy reduction and decreasing vehicle miles traveled, but does not look at specific carbon emissions because we had not done an inventory yet. So we just didn't know what our baseline was. So now that we have done that inventory, after we adopted the sustainability plan, we could either go back to our sustainability plan and open it up and amend it to include a goal, or we could look at just setting something as a separate standing. This is our goal for carbon emissions. And cities do it both ways. Some of them include it within their sustainability plan, and some just do a separate climate action goal or an entire plan that includes all of the strategies and how they're going to achieve those goals.
So I know we have a couple more hands. I just wanted to echo, I like the goal setting piece. I think my concern is where we are. Like, I completely agree with the transition in vehicles and setting the goals. We just have to be mindful of the impact of the pandemic on our budget. And so as we move into the strategic planning process, we need to be really mindful of how much money we can spend and how we want to prioritize it as we move forward. So just something to think about, because all these ideas are fantastic. It's just, which ones can we afford on which timeline? I think we're pretty committed to doing the work long term. It's just how quickly we'll be able to do it, depends on how much money we want to spend as far as like that vehicle turnover. But I see Councilmember Mullica has her hand up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I have a quick question, and I guess it's more of just being honest about where I'm at, because there's a lot of information when it comes to what goes into the sustainability plan. And one of the things that I personally feel uncomfortable with is I don't really feel like I know enough in this area. And so I'm really glad that we got some great leaders on our team to help us through that. But I definitely am not leading the boat here, okay? I'm hoping that there's some great people who can help me figure out what our goals should be as a city. And so one of the questions that I have is there kind of like a model, like sustainability plan from Colorado? Is there like a community that's kind of really leading the way here so that we have some kind of reference point? And is that an opportunity to maybe like sit down and have like a conversation as a council of and probably some education on my part, honestly, about, because this technology is really emerging quickly. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure what's available new this year that wasn't available last year. So, I think it would be great to have a model plan to kind of look to see what some other cities are doing, look to see what new technologies they're trying to go after, or what new initiatives. For me, that would help me, I think, try and figure out how to prioritize our needs as a city, and really, where's our lane here when it comes to sustainability plans? Where's the work that we should be doing? So that would be something that, it's not a question, it's more of like a plea for help, but thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to weigh in? Becky, do you have more to share? Oh, Councilmember Downing.
Thank you. I'm kind of curious. A few years ago, Brooke, we did an audit of all the city buildings, as far as energy focused. Are we utilizing some of these plans? I know we've implemented a few things, but are we using part of that as we go forward?
The short answer is yes. Becky might be able to expand a little bit on that, but I know that at least with our facilities folks, they've done a lot of efficiency upgrades over time. And I think one of the things that what we sort of determined is that those little incremental steps that we've done over time have actually provided quite a bit of a benefit. But to the extent that there's more you could do, it's really about a funding issue. And also, I think when you go back to what we did with the MEP, the mechanical evaluation, mechanical, electrical, plumbing evaluation that we did for City Hall as part of the preliminary steps for the Civic Center Master Plan, there's this question of, is it cheaper to replace or is it cheaper to retrofit? And I know that we've had the same discussion in years past about the rec center and life cycle costs. So I think those are all important factors. I do know that we are looking at those things. They are part of the overall mix. I think the question, maybe to help shape part of your question, is there more value in looking at that versus other things? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that that's something we can also take into account, is there more benefits to upgrading? I will say that, with respect to M&O, I know that we've done a lot already. And then when you think about the water plant, we have looked at possibly doing solar at the water plant. The thing with solar is whether we do what they call water babies, where you can actually put it on the ponds themselves, on the intake lagoons, is that the return on investment is like 25 to 30 years for that. But there's still opportunities there. It's a question of where do we get it's the other leg to this conversation, which we're not trying to have tonight, is where is the yield? Where is the biggest bang for our buck? I think what we've struggled with as a staff is we have all these existing efforts that all the various departments have done, and that's part of what we wanted to identify. And the second part of this is okay, that's what we're doing. What else would you like us to look at so that we can kind of put together a better game plan? I think to Councilmember Wolford's comment about where's that real value, whether it's carbon foot reduction or energy consumption or whatever metrics we want to apply.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. And I've got just a couple more comments as far as, supporting different items that you brought forward. I really like the home energy squad. I think that's something that the citizens would really love to have. And I'm really curious, and I kind of like the idea of a solar co-op, rather, excuse me. I think that would be great. And I'm wondering if that even couldn't go regional. If we took on something like that, if it would expand into something else, that the other cities might be interested in doing. Or even if that's something feasible, so. And then, of course, I've always supported the EV charging stations, and I really like to have the idea of replacing our vehicles at M&O with, electric vehicles if it is actually feasible for us. And I'm curious about solar gardens. I really wish I heard a little more about that. The last thing that Becky talked about, yeah, I would really like to hear more about that.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to quickly respond to a question that Councilmember Duran Mullica raised just around what communities have really solid climate action plans or sustainability plans that could potentially be something that we look at. And I think I mentioned that Summit County essentially created their own climate action plan. And then what each of the municipalities did was take a look and decide whether or not they were going to adopt it as their own sustainability plan. So that one's pretty solid. Denver just recently completed their climate action task force planning process and created a pretty robust document that I think is going to guide how the city reaches the mayor's vision of 80% emission reductions by 2050. And that one is really forward thinking and ambitious. And then also Fort Collins has a pretty solid climate action plan that I think, there could be some pretty good models that we could potentially explore. But I think, the question that just in my mind keeps coming up is, how are we going to, if we don't know what our goals are, how are we going to know when we get there? And so I think one of the most important thing we can do is actually establish what our reduction goals look like. And then we can scale some of the transportation plans, some of the, buildings plans and energy efficiency work accordingly.
Councilmember Downing?
I appreciate the information that Councilwoman Wolford is bringing forward. That's a lot of information. And what I think we need to do is, number one, give this to staff and let them kind of mull it over and then possibly bring it to another study session. Right now, I don't think we have our arms around all this right now. So I think that it would be beneficial if we move forward with what's on the agenda and then take that to a different time and place.
Thank you. Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Downing. My feeling is that I know I'm new, but I did look over the sustainability plan, and with 8 general goals, it's some and then there's not a, and I know they were kind of broken down a little bit as further into the PowerPoint, but I do feel like it's worth spending the time to have a discussion about some more specific goals, maybe for each of those areas, or I don't know what to call them because they're goals, but they're goal areas. And there's not really like a statement like transportation, it says, is one of the goals, but it doesn't, to actually have us maybe hash out or help staff prioritize or even in our own minds, what transportation goals, sustainability goals we want to try to get to. So I do feel like it might be worth it to have this come forward again, with the opportunity to just focus on the sustainability plan.
So can I ask a question, probably of Heather, actually? Can this be a part of our strategic planning budget conversation?
It can be, Mayor Leidy. However, I would recommend that it's a separate conversation. Budget for 2021 is going to be tight. And so I want to be mindful that, certainly leading up to budget 2021, shortly thereafter, I hadn't planned on doing a regular strategic planning process this year because of COVID-19 and because we do have a very ambitious strategic plan in place that work is underway on. So I think what we can do is take the feedback that we've received tonight, and I know there's a few council members we haven't heard from yet, and then I can work with Brooke and Becky, and we can put some thoughts together about a future study session where we take a deeper dive into some of these areas, and based on the feedback that we've heard tonight, put a framework together to help guide you to that next level of decision making. I think Brooke and Becky nod or disagree. I think we can do that based on what we're hearing from you tonight. Does that help, Mayor?
Yeah. Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. I love anything that we can do to help the homeowner reduce their energy costs. And that's stuff that we can do on a small scale that doesn't break the bank. And I think Brooke's comments are very apt and poignant, is in terms of what we're doing in a tight fiscal year. What can we do that has the most bang for the buck, that's an immediate need in accordance to a long-term vision? So on a short term, I think anything, as Councilwoman Downing said, about helping homeowners and the education and the efficacy piece of heating and energy costs is an absolutely a start. And then in terms of where we go, big picture down the road, I think is better served for another day.
Thank you. Member Goff, did you have one more piece? No? Okay.
No, I think my hand is just still up.
Yeah, that's fine. I got it. Okay. Well, Becky and Brooke, do you have enough information for tonight, or do you have specific questions you want to elevate again?
No, I think I've got good information on what we can prioritize to move forward and just an internal staff discussion that could be had. There was another component of the staff memo that we did want to discuss this evening, which was sustainability committee versus sustainability board. And so when we developed the sustainability plan, we did work with a resident committee that did agree to continue to meet on a quarterly basis, although we haven't met this year because of COVID. And there's some pros and cons to a board versus a committee, and we can hold that conversation and have a more thorough discussion about that at a future time if that makes sense, because I know this is getting a little long of a discussion, but wanted to put the bug in there.
Does anybody have a take on that? No. Mayor Pro Tem Wolford.
We're happy to bring that back later as well. I just, I think the whole idea here was we didn't want to not address this issue because it's been an ongoing discussion in terms of the relationship of the committee versus a board versus council direction, and trying to help better frame how this is another piece, this is another part of the puzzle where how do we move forward with the process of implementation?
Got it. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do really like the idea of having a standing long-term sustainability board because I think, as we've seen in the last couple of years, technology as well as, folks' commitment to climate action has just changed and accelerated so quickly that I can't imagine that, this year in meeting with our sustainability task force or board or whatever the group is called right now is going to be the only time that we need input, or it's going to be the only time that we need residents to be a partner with us in making some of these decisions and crafting a vision. And so I think having that, longer standing board in the same way that we do as other boards and commissions, I think is really important. And I think that it's something that we've seen at least across communities across Colorado communities, is that standing space to talk about sustainability. And so I would love to see that moving forward. And I think, we're seeing the homelessness task force move forward electronically. And I think that perhaps this board could also move forward electronically. And for goodness sakes, it saves us some transportation related emissions. So thank you.
Does anybody else want to weigh in on that? Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. Yes, I think I would like to see, in looking at the comparisons between a board and a committee, I would like to see something brought forward about creating a board in terms of, like what kind of, bylaws and goal and agendas and, and to hear a little bit about the current committee in terms of what the makeup of the members of that has been, how many people, how many of those people might be interested in being on a board if it was a board. So I think that's something that could come forward, but I don't have enough information right now to make a decision about one over the other.
Understood.
Councilmember Downing?
Thank you. I agree with Councilwoman Goff. I don't have enough information yet to decide if I would want a committee or a board, a permanent board put in place. And the other thing, I am concerned that we have difficulty filling all of our boards. And so I would put that out there just as a consideration.
Thank you. I would agree. Is there anything else for Becky and Brooke tonight? No? Well, I would thank you both for your time. That was a lot of information. That memo might be on record as the longest one. It had a lot of information and was very helpful. So thank you for putting it together. I think we're ready to move forward. So thank you for joining us. Brooke is still here because we were talking about the International Building Code discussion. So you want to take it from here?
Sure. My input here will be much shorter. We are on currently the 09 International Building Codes, and that's the long list that you saw in the Sustainability Staff Memo. For this discussion, I didn't re-enumerate them only because what we're really trying to hear back from council is there interest in going beyond just the IBCs? And I believe, the Green Stretch Code was mentioned, the Denver Green Stretch Code was mentioned earlier in the last discussion item. I will say that in general, going from the 09s and or 12s to the 18s will probably, depending on the type of construction, whether it's new, residential, commercial versus remodel, infill, will result in anywhere from a 20 to 30% energy reduction or energy savings realization just because of the codes themselves. Primarily where most of those savings would be realized is in commercial. And from what I've looked at least on the Denver Green Building Code where for the roofs, is it largely applies to commercial properties over 25,000 square feet. So what we wanted to do tonight was just to get some feedback from council as to what you would like us to explore. Right now, the 18s are more or less teed up, ready for adoption. I've gone through an exhaustive process with the building department, Safe Built, and going through all the revisions that have taken place between the 9s and the 18s, just so that I better understand what their implications are for our ability and what those changes might represent to our community, whether it be for the individual homeowner or for new commercial or infill development.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Brooke?
Let me throw this out. Is there something more above and beyond what the 18s have that you would like us to explore and look at and bring back to you as either part of the adoption or as a separate process? That's the question tonight.
I don't have any additions. I think the work to move from the 9s to the 18s is a lot in and of itself, and I think it's okay as is, but if other council members have some ideas, let us know. Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Brooke, I apologize. I haven't looked as deeply into the 2018 code suggestions as I probably should have. But are there opportunities from your perspective to, I guess, ensure that any new buildings or once a particular threshold has been met, when, whether they're doing redevelopment or not, that triggers some new requirements around electric vehicle charging infrastructure? And is there an opportunity to go above and beyond?
So if I understand your question, does the IBCs throw a trigger for requiring charging stations based on the type of remodel of an existing building or the type of new construction? Okay, I don't believe so. Our zoning code is more neutral in that, where if we do have new greenfield development or new construction, we encourage that. I think, let me go back and take a closer look at the distinction there, because I believe one way or the other, we can address that concern.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. And I mean, I would also be really interested, like Denver's stretch code. I mean, I think I mentioned that it's like highly energy efficient, is pretty net zero focused, and then also has some of the electric vehicle charging infrastructure requirements. And so I guess I would be interested in, like, is it feasible? Does it make sense for us to have a voluntary stretch code? And I know that with their voluntary stretch code that there are some, I think, added like benefits or incentives for when a builder chooses to go the stretch or the green stretch code. Like, for example, they don't have to wait as long for permits, or there's a reduction in permitting fees. And so I just wonder, like, is this an opportunity to explore something that could be voluntary, or do we simply adopt the 2018 IPCC code stuff and then, work with a sustainability committee to really imagine what a voluntary green stretch code could look like? Because I don't know that we're necessarily ready, and it seems like council is really interested in some additional education. And so I just wonder if that could be a next step.
I would agree with both of those. I mean, I can definitely take a lot more closer look at the stretch code and see what it all entails. I think part of what I saw with the green building code, which is the roofing for commercial, is it talks about creating a fund if you pay in lieu of and things like that. And I think that's a little bit more layered as opposed to setting out goals and principles that we would incorporate with the IBCs is I think a different thing. But I'm definitely can explore that further and get back. And then what I might suggest is, I think the latter may make more sense, and I think it would actually be a good exercise for the sustainability committee to sort of take on and keep them engaged on an ongoing basis. Because once again, I think part of our challenge with the committee is because we don't really have a well-established scope as far as what our priorities are, et cetera. This could be one where we could look at that and better utilize it as well.
Thank you, Brooke.
Yep, thank you.
Does anybody else have items for Brooke? Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. I guess Mike, just as kind of a simple question, but it sounds like we're in agreement that we need the 2018 codes to go into effect and look into possibly, extending those, in the near future. But how soon before these codes do go into effect? I mean, is this going to come into play with the Civic Center master plan or, development there, or Carl's Dairy Farm, or, how soon will these be affecting new construction?
So once adopted, after the adoption, the period of, I believe it's 10 days, they would go into effect. And so new construction that isn't currently submitted under permit would be subject to the 18s. So we've notified Carl's Farm that this was coming. And so we've already taken that into account. And I think from the standpoint of what with future phase, the private sector development for Civic Campus, it will also be taken into account. I would also mention that most of the communities in the Front Range are either working off the 15s and the 18s. And so in terms of the market and the development industry, most of those folks are already familiar with and have already taken into account what those cost implications are for making their numbers work on their side of the coin. So I would suggest that this is not going to be a shock to the system for the development community as much as it is us getting caught up. And just to take a one step back or an anecdotal mention here is we typically, it's my objective to try to update the codes every 6 years and not do them every, because the codes come out every 3 years. And so what I like to do is do them every 6 years. And then on the 6th year, there's a first edition and a second edition, and not adopt until after the second edition, because that's when they clean up all the mistakes and it makes it much easier to not have to amend. So that's typically what we try to do. However, that didn't happen. That wasn't the case this last iteration. So we're really just trying to get to the 18s.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Anybody else for Brooke tonight? No, I think that's it for that item. Brooke, do you have what you need?
Nope, thank you, I do.
Okay, thank you. All right, have a great night. Okay, we're moving into the city manager and city clerk evaluation process 2020 timeline. So we do have June Ramos with us. So hello. I will go ahead and
hello, thank you. Hello, counselors.
All right, June, you can take it away.
Oh, good. The timeline's brought up. Thank you. Hello, counselors. Again, thank you. Brief time with you is just to make sure that the timeline that I provided meets your understanding and your requirements so that we have a good process in place. Don't panic by the level of detail that is included in the timeline. What this is a compilation of all the key deliverable activities that I will be responsible for. And so I just wanted to answer any questions you have and focus on the requirements of council, your role and your responsibilities for each of the key activities. So Mayor, I thought I would do a very, very brief overview and then entertain any questions if that works for everybody. Okay.
That's great.
So yeah, thank you. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this, but we are at that place on August 3rd where we're going to review the timeline and answer any final questions. As soon as this meeting's over, sometime tomorrow morning, I'm going to work with the staff to get into the SurveyMonkey account and the SurveyMonkey forms to start with. One for your stakeholders, each of the for your city clerk and your city manager. I'm going to start that process, send out that SurveyMonkey, and begin to gather the data so that you have other data points to match your experience with each one of your appointees. And then once I send out that SurveyMonkey and give people approximately 2 weeks to complete the SurveyMonkey to the stakeholders, and I'll send a reminder to the city manager and the city clerk to complete the self-evaluation form. Mayor, in the past, what I've done with other municipalities is that when I communicate with your appointees, that I always copy the mayor on that correspondence. I don't usually copy the entire council unless you see it differently. So I just want to make sure that that would be okay and just wanted to check in. Okay, yes. Good. And you can keep your council apprised that things are happening and anybody can contact me at any point in time. As I compile that, once the survey closes, the SurveyMonkey closes, I'll do the compilation of data. And by 8/24, just so you know, that's also my birthday. I'll be working on my birthday for you. I'm delighted to do so. And I will send out the SurveyMonkey link or the compilation, I should say, to start sending that to you, actually by 8/21. Then you have that. I'm going to on 8/24, I should say, I will send out the SurveyMonkey link to council, and that's where you will begin to add your comments and provide the performance review for your two appointees, the city clerk and the city manager. Looks like I've given you approximately 2.5 to 3 weeks, council members, to complete that. And again, you fill it out, of course, and for those of you who are newer to the process, based on your own experience with your appointees, and then you'll have the SurveyMonkey data from the stakeholders that will also be your other data point, okay? Then on September 14th, is when we will meet again via Ring Central, again virtually, where I will help facilitate the executive session with council to review all of the data, your comments. And as I mentioned in a previous session, my goal is to help you just summarize all of the points of view that are represented by the various council members. And the simplest way that I do that is, I think I remember saying this to you, I usually do, what are the strengths and the positives that you want to make sure that that data is provided to your appointee? What are the areas of improvement? And then what targeted goals do you have for the upcoming performance cycle the next 12 months? I'll facilitate that, and I'll check with City Clerk Jonah. Do we have anything else on the agenda, or is this just the session is just my facilitation of this performance review process? Or Heather?
June.
There you are, Joanna. Hello.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Heather. I heard you start to talk. So.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to ask you, June, repeat your question. Are you asking what else is on the agenda for October 12th or?
No, the September 14th, that's the consensus discussion executive session.
There are other items on the agenda right now. So what we'll probably need to do is possibly be creative about the timing and do something before the start of the regular meeting, or so there are other items, and right now we do have another executive session scheduled for phase 2 of the Civic Center plan, so we'll need to touch base on the scheduling of that session.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, just let me know when you need me, and council members, the goal is to be as efficient as possible and give you to have the right discussion and make sure we reach consensus on the final performance rating and evaluation. At the conclusion of that session, then I'll come back to my computer, and in a couple of days I'll put together, it's the transcription of my flip charts and my summary notes. I then will email that document, and I will ask you each to edit and review to make sure that I've represented all of your comments appropriately. So it looks like I've given you from the 18th to the 30th. What Heather and I did is work backwards from when you're actually going to do the performance review on each one of these people and make sure that I give you enough time, a week or two or whatever. So you would each read my summary document. And if you have any suggestions, editing, questions, and then I can incorporate appropriate changes. Again, we'll be looking for consensus. So if you make a recommendation, I'll have to check with other council members to say that here's a significant change. We want to be true to the consensus discussion of the 14th, okay? Then I incorporate all of those edits, and I write the final evaluation summary, and I send that out to you, council, by October 5th. In addition, a copy of that document is also sent to the city manager and the city clerk. So each one of those individuals, Heather and Joanna, will have an opportunity to read and then be prepared for their actual performance review on October 12th. Also, there's a piece in there on October 5th that Human Resources provides compensation and benefits data to City Council so that you can incorporate that as part of your final evaluation. And Heather, since I don't work directly for with Human Resources, I put that in as a key activity, but who will be responsible for triggering that? Is that something you and Joanna will do, Heather and or Joanna?
So I've already let Jason Loveland, our interim HR director, know that this is coming and that's a responsibility he'll have. We use Candy Johnson with Compensation Studio Services as our third-party comp consultant. And she's already been doing her work on reviewing the market analysis for 2020. And so we'll have that information pulled together. Additionally, she's doing work on a pay equity study that's required per state legislation that we have to, from last year, that we have to be in compliance with beginning in January. So any of that relevant information, Jason will forward to council through you and make sure you have everything, that council has everything that they need.
Okay, and then again on the 12th of October, council, you will then meet in executive session individually and separately with both Heather and Joanna and provide a verbal review of that process. I do not attend that meeting, but I'm delighted to provide you tips and ideas of if anybody has any questions about that. But many of you, if not all of you, have participated in performance reviews. You've conducted performance reviews, and this is not a new process for you. So I've added a final item that if you wanted to come back and circle back and just do a after action review, how the process go. I know we just did one with Joe Mattoon a few weeks ago, but to keep it in top of mind afterwards, if you wanted to, we could do that via email. We could do that via another quick discussion like this in the near future. It's optional and needed. I will make myself available. And if you want that, if it's a significant item, I'll do a separate statement of work. If it's just an hour discussion, it will be gratis, and I'll just do that for free. Okay, so again, there are a lot of key activities here, but I don't know if this was printed in color. So what I did is highlighted in red for you those areas that target you specifically in terms of your time, your requirements, and your roles and responsibilities. So I am open for all discussion and or question, Mayor.
Well, I want to start by saying I really appreciate it. This is exactly what I was thinking we were going to get the other day. So this was exactly what I was looking for. It's very thorough and makes a lot of sense. So thank you.
Okay, good. Well, and I do remember that Councilmember Peterson, he wanted to make sure that it was simple, and I wanted to maintain a level of simplicity and ease for you. So I hope I accomplished that goal. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. Does anybody have any questions or comments for June? No? Well, thank you very much for presenting this. This makes a lot of sense, and I think we now know where we're headed.
And I know what work is ahead of me, and I'll keep you, Mayor, I'll keep you informed of the process and all that when those key deliverables are met, so that we're always on target. And transparency and openness of communication is pretty critical. Thank you, council members.
Okay.
And I hope you have a good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. I feel like June's in a camper right now. That looked kind of amazing. Councilmember Esquivel, did you have a question for June?
Well, I don't know if it's for June or for you or for Heather, but it would be nice to have this in a document sent to us rather than having to go into the web docs and get it printed.
So you just want that sent to you?
Heather, can you or your staff send that so that I have it in front of me? And
yes, we can. We can do that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving into the next item. Oh, this is exciting. Hello, Diana. Plans for the N line opening September 21st. So we have our Director of Communications with us. Diana, what do you got?
Mayor, City Council, thanks for having me. I have to be honest with you. I'm excited that I have something to present, but I'm a little disappointed that it isn't a bigger party. In a nutshell, RTD is not doing very much. They plan on leaving Union Station around 8. They'll stop in each municipality at least once, have a small ribbon cutting in each municipality. and then officials will get on the end line and then go to the end station where they'll essentially have a ribbon cutting and some photo ops. So no big event, unfortunately. However, we weren't very happy with that. So we have submitted an application asking for at least an hour of time where we can recognize our artists, look at our artwork, invite not only current elected officials, but past elected officials and other VIPs. I know we have a number of people that have worked on transportation committees. So really would like to invite them to at least enjoy the day. It is a Monday morning, so the 21st, so not exactly party time anyway, but we would like to have some music, have some presentations, and that is kind of snacks. The snacks really will be in the goodie bag because, you know, COVID, everybody have to wear masks. But, you know, we'll have a few people there and we'll have some music there and we'll make it as much of a celebration as we can. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, unless you guys have questions.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. So my question is, how soon can I ride on it?
You can ride on it as soon as you cut the ribbon. You can jump right on. So it'll actually the 21st. They want to have all these activities finished by 10 a.m. so that they can run their schedule.
So then if I were, it would go to the north end of this route and then it would turn around and come back and I could jump back off at Northglenn if I wanted.
That's exactly right. So you're all the way to Union Station and do something.
I don't know. I mean, I think it'll be, I'm looking forward to riding on it. So I'm just curious. Thank you.
Can I ride it all day? Just keep going that way and this way.
Get your free day's worth, boy.
Yes, right? So, I mean, I guess maybe it's a question for RTD, but are families allowed? Can we bring additional guests or no?
To ours, you can absolutely bring additional guests. As far as getting on the train with the VIPs, that would be a question for RTD. We are having a meeting with RTD on Thursday in the hopes that they'll let us know in plenty of time that our plan is approved. So I can ask.
Okay. I just, you know, it's a big deal. I'd like to bring my kids. Councilmember Downing.
This is a big deal. We've been working on it for a long time. You know, so it's so exciting. I'm so glad that, you know, that we're finally going to have a ribbon cutting. And then just as part of the Arts and Humanities Foundation, seriously, we have great art and the artist is going to be there. I mean, it's going, we've got the best station. Let's just face it. We've got the best station. So just wanted to share that.
Now, and I think that's awesome that the artist will be there and will be celebrated. I drove through and saw some of that artwork just 2 days ago. It looks great.
Yeah.
All right, and in case you're wondering, I did talk to Thornton to kind of see what they were doing. Yeah, they're not really doing anything either, but they don't have any artwork either. So I'm like, oh, apparently you're on top of it and got artwork. Good job.
Yeah.
And Michael Stricker, so that's cool.
Absolutely.
So do you know when you'll?
You know, they were very helpful and said it was due August 1 and that they would let us know by August 31. I'm hoping it's sooner than that because, you know, we don't need more good guys sitting around that I can't get rid of.
Okay. So remind me, so your application was to have a few more people or just a longer event?
Both. We actually didn't set a number. The number of people that we will invite will probably be less than 50. But as far as how many people attend, it's a public event. I wouldn't promote it heavily. I would mention that we're having it in our on our social media and in the connection, but not like it's a big party. And like I said, it's for an hour on a Monday. So really it's elected officials, and people that are interested in this area, the artists, our Arts and Humanities Board. Those are all the people that will be invited. A few very brief speeches, music, recognize the artists, hand out some goodie bags. We will have some extra goodie bags.
Okay. Great. Any other questions for Diana? No, it is very exciting. Thank you for your work on that. I appreciate it.
We're excited too. Thanks.
Okay, are there any other items for council for our study session? No, okay. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting. I'm going to recommend that we take can we do 5 or 10 minutes? Give me a show of hands, 5 or 10? 5, okay. So 5 minutes, it is 8:09. So we will reconvene our special meeting at, if I can do the math, 8:14. So we'll see you in a little bit. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Here we go. So we are going to move into the special meeting. I will now call to order the special city council meeting of August 3rd, 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically and members of the council are participating remotely pursuant to the council's electronic participation policy. Public access to the meeting is available on the local government access channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers and on the city's YouTube channel online. Public access is also available by telephone by utilizing the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. All callers will be muted and may only comment during the time allotted for public comment as indicated on the agenda. Thank you all for following these directions and for maintaining meeting decorum tonight. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Lighty,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford,
Here.
Councilmember Witkovich is absent. Councilmember Peterson,
Here.
Councilmember Downing,
Here.
Councilmember Brown is absent. Councilmember Goff,
Here.
Councilmember Duran Mollica,
Here.
Councilmember Esquivel.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So I'm having some video issues for this round. We're not quite sure, but I'm going to share my screen so that we can. Okay, does everyone see the pledge or the flag?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we're moving into public invited to be heard. Joanna, do we have anybody signed up tonight?
We do not have anybody signed up.
Okay, thank you. So we need to move into an executive session. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I would move to adjourn into executive session.
Second.
Joanna, will you call the vote, please?
Mayor Lighty,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Downing,
Yes.
Councilmember Goff,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Mollica,
Yes.
Councilmember Esquivel.
Yes.
I will close that vote and the motion to adjourn to executive session passes unanimously.
Okay, we are adjourned to executive session.